The thing is, too many people trying to get their point across, and they're trying to oppose like the standing.
All right, so we're live. I just want everybody to know we're live. Let me just put a date timestamp on here. First of all, ETM Hotep, welcome everyone. All 1 million viewers. Got one person viewing, probably me. And we're live. Today is Wednesday, June 16th, 2021. And yeah, so today is Divine Words Wednesday. Today we're going to have an open discussion because the feedback that, we've been having these open discussions on off days, pretty much ad hoc or random, really. And the feedback and the participation has been good. So, we just want to keep this going for a while, have these discussions to bring your own topic, BYOT, bring your own topic instead of bring your own bag. And let's just discuss a few things. Now, obviously, for time's sake, we can't cover a whole lot of topics, but we're going to keep this up so we can have different topics on different sessions, different times we go live. And but here's the thing. The topics that we do talk about, we want them in some form or fashion to be anchored into ancient Egypt or Kemet. So, and I always say this, so we're not going to go live and talk about cupcakes and Twinkies, or in other words, things that, that's like out there, way away from anything dealing with ancient Egypt and so on. So I'm trying to keep it, tethered into Kemet or ancient Egypt. But, it's a wide range of things we could talk about because I always like to talk about, leave it open and then anchor it into Kemet, even if people may not think that a particular topic would. All right. So, and I've been doing that for a while. I could pretty much tie everything into Kemet. I get on people's nerves because we could be talking about the coronavirus vaccines, COVID vaccines, and I can tie it, not the vaccine itself, but I can bring up Kemet somewhere in that conversation. So anyway, all right, so I'm gonna be, so just opening up, we already have a topic that we were just now talking before I hit the live button, and so we could just kind of pick up on that and just keep it going. So I'm gonna put the link to the panel as I normally do. So give me a second. But Zane, you think you were saying something, or any one of you all were saying something? First, introduce yourself so everybody will know who's on the panel.
Yeah, I'll tap this Zane.
All right. Zane.
Hotep, this is Tamika, Mika.
All right.
Hotep, Betty, Ren-E, Imiket, this is Imiket. Welcome.
All righty. And this is your brother Wujao, Ren-E, Wujao, Menebedi Ma'at, or just Wujao is fine. All right, so let's continue the conversation, but just in the beginning, let me say this, because I always forget to make these little announcements. The links, if you want to hang and keep up with what we discuss and stuff like that, and in the description of all of our videos, we have the links to our Facebook group, to the class. Now we have we focus on the language. That's like the paramount. That's like the priority advocacy that we deal with. But we stretch out a bit because focusing on the language and the language only can get very what do you call it? Monotonous, as they say, or whatever the case is. And so we like to talk about culture and branch out. That's what I always do to kind of keep it fresh, keep it going. But the main focus, though, is a push to gain competency in the language, at least at a beginner's level. So we have a beginner's language study course, and it's designed for you to learn at your own pace, according to your own time and availability. But along with that, you get a textbook that you go through in a sequential order through the chapters. It's 8 chapters, and you have access to a weekly live session to go over whatever information that you have questions on, clarification, and anything like that. So that's what the study course is about. And so we have that, and the link is in the description also. All right. So I just want to, and the links are links to publications, the textbook, Emicat wrote a penmanship book, and we have the rebuttal book as well. Those 3 books. And hopefully, not hopefully, but soon we'll have another book, which is Egyptian grammar book that has been worked on for a long while. And I intend on finally publishing that. My goal is to have it published this year. And, I don't want to lock in it too much of a time frame. Anyway, okay, so that's that. And so spread the word about that. Okay, so now we can go in on the topic. So give me a moment while you all talk. I'm going to post a link to the panel. And don't be shy. Don't be afraid. This is a safe zone. We don't do the noisy stuff. We don't deal with any of that. And I don't even have to go over our etiquette rules or anything. If it just gets a certain way, we just don't tolerate things. That's just the bottom line. I don't have to explain any of that. So I would post a link, panel link. Any and everybody is invited to chime in. But go ahead. I guess one of you all were saying something. Maybe not. Okay, well, hey, I could I can keep it going. Okay, so let me kick it off because I kind of kicked it off before we went live. Okay, so apparently there's a discussion, or there was a discussion on the Dagger Squad about the Egyptians being black. I guess that was a topic. Actually, that's the title of the thing. When I clicked on it, it was the title of it. The Egyptians are black. Let me see. Do I still have it? Yeah. Are the Egyptians black? Question. And then with sources. So that's the topic of the show, or was, because I don't think they're live anymore. Yeah. So I didn't tune into the show, right? Because I wasn't available to tune in, but someone had inboxed me to bring it to my attention, because obviously it's about ancient Egypt and everything. And but I saw the message late. So by the time I clicked on it, they were not talking about that topic. They were talking about Freemasonry, or and some things like that. So I didn't tune in on that. But that topic of Egyptians being black. Now I do speak about that every now and then, about the Egyptians being black, and my stance is this about that. The whether or not the Egyptians are black is a distraction, is a almost a banana in the tailpipe situation at this point. Because if we are to spend decades focusing on that, and the reason why I say decades is because Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop and Dr. Theophilo Benga, they were the champions of those issues in the 1970s. Okay, at the UNESCO conference is one of the highlights of that push and advocacy about the blackness of the Egyptians and so on and so forth. And I know a lot of people are already familiar with that, with their work and so on. But that happened in 1974. So you got 1970s, 80s, that's 2 decades, 70s, and then 80s, 90s, that make 3 decades, 2000s, that's 4, and then 2010s, 5, and now we're in the 20s, that's 6. So we're going on 6 decades of that argument. And at some point, and this is the thing, at some point, you have to conclude and keep it moving. So, and this is what I mean. In 2021, anybody that still argues whether the Egyptians are black or not, at this point, like I said, it is a distraction because it keeps you focused on a 6-decade question with a lot of information and papers and things written and spoken about it, instead of people going and doing that literature review and surveying the already written literature about that. People are trying to reinvent arguments, and it's very silly to do that because it sets us back 60 years. And then on top of that, it keeps us from, it's a constant diversion from us actually tapping into the genius of the ancient Egyptians. Like, we're so focused on what color skin they had or what we would call them, whether they're black or not. And we're not even tapping into the mentality, the psychology, the genius behind the civilization. We're not even talking about that. Like, there's so few conversations on the Egyptian genius, the Kemet's genius versus Kemet's skin color. And to me, that's flat out retarded. And I don't ride the short bus. I'm not riding the short bus with those people that argue over short bus topics. And that's what I call it. At this point now, it's a short bus topic. And Wajal's not getting on the short bus. All right. That's just the bottom line. I'm not going to be a short bus shawty. And I know Kadeem know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to be a short bus shawty. So nah, I'm not doing that. And I don't advise anybody else to do that. It's done. It's done.
Yeah, see, like what I was trying to say earlier is like, I don't get why people who already know what it is. Why do they try to talk to people who just simply refuse to agree with what already been confirmed?
Right. It's the same thing. I look at that as the same argument about whether Jesus is black or not. You know, there's a moment where that topic is applicable. Like it's worth being a topic. But man, after 6 decades, people have been arguing whether Jesus is black for longer, whether Jesus is black or not. So now we're doing the same thing with the Egyptians, whether they're black or not. And so what I'm saying is it's just a diversion, because here's the thing. And this is what I do to try to move the conversation forward. And here's what's just crazy is because when I do this, you get no forward movement. Because if I run into somebody who wants to argue me up and down that the Egyptians are not black, and I let them have it, I say, okay, you got it. Okay, I concede, you got it. They're not black. Now what? It's like that throws them so off that they don't even have anything else to talk about. And then vice versa. Somebody wants to argue and tell me that the Egyptians are black. I'm like, okay, they're black. Now what? It's like they're stuck too. So it's like both sides. It's like people are so used to arguing about whether they're black or not that the moment you give it to them, no matter who you're talking to, they can't even take the conversation further. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like no studying into the genius of ancient Egypt. Everybody's so focused on whether they're black or not. Ultimately, now here's the ultimate reason is to try to it's really a we call it a feel-good endeavor. We argue those things to feel good, because if the Egyptians are said to be black, if everybody agrees that the Egyptians are black and we call ourselves black, then hey, the Egyptians that everybody brags about and romanticize, commercialize so much, hey, they're black, we're black. That means we're them, they're us. They're us and we're them. Haha, hoorah, hooray. You know, we built the best classical civilization on the planet Earth. And that makes us feel good. That gives us, that's a self-esteem, collective self-esteem boost. But how useful is that self-esteem boost if you don't even tap into the genius of the people to as a resource to pull from it to solve our problems today? Because here's the thing, we can feel good, we can advocate that the Egyptians are black and feel good about it. Once people agree with it, we could feel good about it, but yet we're still at the bottom globally. And more specific here in the United States, as African Americans who do all this arguing and talking, we're at the bottom still. So here we are feeling good that the Egyptians are black and built such a sophisticated and off the charts civilization, but yet look at our condition today. Look at us today. But yet we supposed to feel good. We, feel good. Yes. Like, come on. No, you're supposed to use history as a resource to apply in the here and now, past, present, future. You use the past as a resource to deal with stuff in the present, to project and align things for the future. And so if we don't get into doing that, we're not going to get any far. We're not going to become great again, and do great things. We're just going to be always on the sideline, complaining, pointing the finger, blaming this, blaming that, being pacified and everything, making no progress, being our own worst enemy at that. Because things are so sophisticated now that our enemies, if we want to label the collective us and to label a collective enemy against the collective us, though those folks who we will call our enemies, they don't even have to directly do anything anymore, because we are so we have these self-inflicted wounds now, where all they got to do is just make a suggestion and then we do things to ourselves. That's how sophisticated things have gotten. They don't have to have direct things anymore like in the past. Racism, white supremacy, and all those things have evolved along with the normal pace of social evolution. Just like the internet has evolved. I remember my first connection to the internet. And back then I thought that was fast, but it was purely dial-up. It was all text, no images, no nothing. It was, like a 400 baud modem where you hear the fax machine noise and you dial in and you get connected, and all you could do was send messages. No images, no video, no nothing, no pictures, none of that. None of that was going on. None of that. And back then, because my whole life I've been in computer programmer ever since junior high school. And I remember the computers, man, if you had, and I don't even remember, but I'm trying to remember, but what I can compare it to, if you had a 10 megabyte drive, man, you were doing something. Now, mind you, I didn't say gigabyte or terabyte. I said megabyte, 10 megabytes. You were in the game. I mean, you were doing something with 10 megabytes.
Dang, I don't even remember that.
And I'm telling you,
That's
right
so
now, yeah, right now, one picture is bigger than 10 megabytes. One picture.
Yeah.
And from what I can remember, our whole hard drive was like a 10 megabyte or 100 megabytes, the whole hard drive. And we had those 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. Then we had the 1.25 inch floppy disk, the harder ones, the
Mhm.
smaller,
I
harder
hate
ones.
like them. That was my favorite thing about computers.
We had a floppy disk. We had no jump drive. There was no such thing as USB. None of those ports existed. It was the only port you had was the off and on switch and the printer cable. That was it. You could hook a printer up, the monitor, and an off and on switch. No USB, no Thunderbolt, no USB 1, 2, 3, Thunderbolt, Lightning. None of those ports ever existed. None of those.
MS-DOS.
Yep, we had DOS. Now, my first programming language formerly was Pascal. So I'm telling my age. Pascal was the first language I learned. I mean, I learned DOS, but I learned that on my own. But Pascal in school, Pascal, Fortran, and Pascal, and then from there we went to more of object-oriented languages. I learned C, C++, Visual C, DBase, DBase 3, DBase 4, Fox Pro. I'm naming all these things. If anybody knows, like anybody who knows anything, they know I know what I'm talking about just by me naming those names right there. Clipper. I was nasty with Clipper. I could set up a whole DBase, relational databases.
You know what
Anyway.
you know what I remember when I first joined MySpace, and they had you like you could make your own layout for your background, and you would have to. And then when you go in there to edit it, you'll see so much code that you have to like erase it and then copy it from another website to have layouts and paste it. What I figured out how to like take certain things off through the layouts, just like erasing, like deleting certain letters or whatever code that's right there in between. Yeah, I can like read that, but I don't know how it is now. But that was like my first introduction to like a little coding.
Man, yeah, you make me feel old because MySpace came way after. MySpace was after dial-up and
yeah, I know, right?
And
before
way after dial-up, that was broadband.
Way after 98.
But listen, let me tell you, my internet experience started with I said dial-up, right? But my internet interaction, like my social media start, was with what they call them? What they call those things? It was before AOL and it was before CompuServe. Remember, AOL and CompuServe was the two top social media companies at the time. But prior to that, it was man, I forgot what you call it, and man, it's gonna bother me. I'm gonna find out. I'm gonna figure it out. But it was rooms. Like when you log in, you just go to these rooms, but it wasn't really a room. It was you find a topic, and you click on it. And you go into this room. The room had a bot, and you're a user, and you could just talk. You could just type and talk like a chat room. There was a whole bunch of chat rooms. Man, I forget. It was Usernet. It was different networks, Usernet, and so on. It's gonna come to me, but anyway. But listen, I remember being on CompuServe and AOL, and mind you, this is before broadband. This is still dial-up. You log into AOL, it says you've got mail, all that stuff. But then I'm gonna tell you, soon as broadband came out, man, that changed the whole game. I remember Black Planet had a channel on AOL, then it became its own entity. That's when, as soon as broadband came in, that's when people can send pictures, and that was a total shift. That changed the whole game. That changed the entire landscape of social media, because now you could meet people, you could see them, and send pictures. It took a long time, but still, that was a game changer. So anyway, I'm saying all of that. Boy, I don't went down that whole road, but I'm a I'm gonna back it up Yeah, IRC chat. There you go. Heru Kim. Yeah, IRC. There you go. IRC chats. That's exactly what it was. IRC chats. And boy, I had my own bot. I built my own bot. I had my own rooms, talking about different subjects where I had a 24/7 bot that kept the room open, kick people out when they try to, man, I used to try to hack and destroy people's rooms and do attacks and stuff. Listen,
I didn't know they had that back then.
yeah, yeah. So I was doing all that stuff, man. But anyway, I'm saying all of that to say that I'm talking about how everything evolves. So we're not there anymore. We're not dialing up anymore. We're not on IRC chat, which is purely text and stuff like that. We don't need bots to keep a room open, anything like that. We're totally UI. We got a totally visual interface and things now and all of that stuff. And so what we tend to do is instead of keeping up with the social evolution and the questions and solving problems, we get stuck. And we get stuck. And when you get stuck, when you stop growing and moving, you're functionally dead. And so we collectively are functionally dead people walking. In the bigger scheme of things, we're dead. We're not advancing anything because we're stuck. We're stuck on stupid. We're stuck in the past. We're stuck on stuff. We're stuck on arguing things that have already been settled or concluded based on the data that's available. Now, unless you're going to discover new data and you're going to inject new data into the discussion so that there could be a reevaluation and stuff, then you're not doing anything. You're just talking, wasting time, diverting, doing nothing. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I'm saying, so Egyptians being black or not, like, I'm at the point where who cares? One thing that nobody argues about and really shouldn't is the Egyptians, because them being black or not, that's going to be a feel good outcome. One thing that everybody can agree on is that Egypt itself, today and yesterday, was and is on the continent of Africa. So for those people who put so much importance on a geographical continent that we call Africa, for those people who do that, then they should feel good enough that Egypt is on that continent that we want to hold up so high, Africa. Okay? Because the earth itself and its habitable land masses is just that. They're land masses that are habitable. Certain land masses have resources that other ones don't, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. So in that, through that lens, land is land and resources are resources. You either have access to them or you don't. But if we're going to champion one continent over the rest, then guess what? Egypt sits on that continent. The country, the Arab Republic of Egypt today, ancient Egypt or Kemet in the past, was always on the continent that we know as Africa. That should be enough. Next. Now you want to get into whether they're black or not. Well, their skin is not black, but like Africa has the most diversity on a genetic level, phenotypic level, everything. It's the most diverse place on the planet. So, like, what? What is there to argue? Can we finally tap into the genius of the people? Can we finally tap into the minds and mentality of the people there? So anyway, I posted a link in the chat. So if y'all didn't see it, it's pinned to the top. So I'm pass the mic. I've been on my soapbox. I just want to kick that off, and y'all could bring it. So if you ask me again, if people ask me, do I think the Egyptians are black or not, and you really want to hear my answer, you're gonna hear an answer to where I really would want to say, who cares? Because I'm trying to, advance the conversation. But if people really want to know, I would tell them, like I always say, the ancient people at that time, they didn't even have a consciousness of the modern social construct of race. So asking that question really has no place. That's what they call it, anachronism, or trying to retrofit a modern concept back in the past. They didn't even have a consciousness of our social construct of race, of the races that we have right now. That wasn't even in their consciousness.
Plus, the whole black thing is very, very vague. So even to argue on something very vague, and I'm pretty sure that whoever was watching that conversation or has watched all those kind of conversations, once is the conversation is done, usually it will take a long time, which is just strange. But then once the conversation is done, there is nothing resolved, and that's why you have, like you said, 50, 60 years people trying to figure that out and still not figuring out, because you're not going to resolve something that is based on something very ambiguous as a black, because there's no definitive description of what black is. It is what anybody else might say, like it's either how you look, or if you're from sub-Saharan Africa or whatever, or somebody might give you their preferred percentage of DNA. So it's very, very, very vague. So you're not going to get anywhere with those kind of conversations. So that's why it's kind of retarded anyway, like you said.
But even if the answer is given, then what? Because Egypt is not sub-Saharan Africa. Based on how sub-Saharan Africa is defined, Egypt is not sub-Saharan Africa. Egypt is North Africa. Okay. So that's that. Is Egypt in Africa? Yes, that's that.
Oh yeah.
So
I also heard today that Egypt was a Mediterranean state.
No, listen.
Right.
How can Egypt be a Mediterranean state when Egypt is not in the Mediterranean?
Yeah, I was wondering how would they use that? How would they use the Mediterranean Sea? I thought they were using the Nile River.
Right. The it's not a Mediterranean state. You might as well say America is a Mediterranean state. If you're gonna say that, you might as well just go all out. Just say Australia is a Mediterranean state.
They did everything you could think of, but I want to kind of just observe tonight. But I just wanted to say, would y'all? I stood on what you teach. You know what I'm saying? So it was easy, and I just handled it like that. But I'm gonna sit back tonight.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, for those who tuned in, again, I appreciate anybody who's tuned in right now. Welcome to the channel. We have an open discussion. The panel link is in the chat. It's pinned to the top. So if you missed the post, it's still pinned there. It's at the top of the chat. If you want to join the panel, you're invited. You're welcome. This is everybody's welcome. Any and everybody is welcome. All right. To join the panel and join the chat. But I kicked it off by, the conversation on the Dagger Squad. I saw the title, but when I was able to click to actually tune in, they weren't talking about the video title anymore. So I didn't hear anything that was said about the topic. The topic was, are the Egyptians black, and then with sources. And so that's what I'm opening up, doing my little soapbox on right now. I'm saying my stance on that question is, who cares at this point? And I'm only saying it, and I got to qualify it by saying at this point, who cares? Now, in the 1970s, if you would have asked me that question, I would give you a different answer. But after 6 decades of arguing that, and people don't know how to argue it. They don't know how to argue it. They don't even know what it means to call a people black or not. And so, and I talk about that in the past as well. What does it mean to be Black? We have the modern social construct that is actually anchored and rooted in the United States. We project it around the world, but not everybody utilize it like how we use it. But we have roughly 5 social classifications that we call race. And basically what it is a division of human populations that we do socially. That's why it's a social construct. We create these 5 categories of human taxa. These are human categories based on populations, but the criteria is just really vague and it's just open how it's done. There's no anchoring in biology or anything like that. There's no biological basis for the concept of race. Or put it this way, let me put it in a better way. In biology, race is right below the taxonomic level of species. But that is nowhere near how we use race socially. So race, how it's used, is a social construct. It has no basis in biology. No basis in biology at all. And when it comes to race, most people they self-identify. Either you self-identify as something, or people will assume something about you and put you in a category. There's no biological basis for that, and that it is what it is. And I'm gonna tell you, the ancient people, prior to the modern social construct being developed and used, ancient people had no such thing in their consciousness. Now, when I say that in the past, or when these conversations come up and people are willing to have a real conversation about it, I'm always asked, well, what do you mean by that? Are you telling me that the Egyptians didn't see differences in people? And my answer to that would be like, of course they saw differences. But here's the thing about categories. See, people got to understand what taxonomy is and ontology is. Ontology and taxonomy are ways in which we categorize things. Ontology is the categorization of existence, and taxonomy is this hierarchy categorization, this hierarchical categorization. So everybody has that. Everybody does that. Humans by nature, we do that. But here's the most important point. What criteria is used to put one thing in a category and exclude another thing? That's the point that people are missing. What is the criteria for it? Is that criteria, and what is it based on? So that's what I mean. The modern social construct of race, the criteria to put somebody in a category of Black or white or oceanic or Pacific and all these other however they relabel them, it has no basis in biology. There's no gene or genetic aspect to the criteria on where to categorize people. So it's only used as a proxy. But it got so popular, and our social fabric is based around it now, that we think it's a real, that there's a reality to it, that there's a biological reality to it, but there isn't. But the way it's used, it would make you think there is, because it's so prominent. It's so prominent right now, and it's been that way ever since the 1600s. It's just grew in prominence to where we actually think it's a real thing, and it's not. In ancient times, human taxa or human population categories was based around culture. Culture was king, not your skin color or any of that stuff that we use today. It was your culture. And out of the cultural items, there's a list of things that make a culture a culture. Out of that list, one of the top elements is language. So much so to the point that in ancient times, if you did not speak my language, you were not of me, regardless of how you look. You could look just like me, but if you didn't speak my language, you were not me or of me, and I was not of you. So I'm giving that as an example of how they saw things. If you did speak my language, even if you look different, you were of me. So I'm saying it in reverse. So even if we don't look alike, if you spoke my language, then you were of me and I was of you. Because language was one of the top, not the only, but one of the top criteria for categorization of people. Why? Because of what language is and what it does to a community. Language is what makes a community, a speech community. Now that you can communicate with one another, there's a proximity of closeness there. And that was paramount. One of the things. So I'm not saying language is the only thing, but that was one of the things. And it was very high on the list. Then you had other things of your weaponry, your mode of dress, your mode of food production, all those other elements come into play. And so when people did those things alike, they were grouped together, regardless of how specifically they looked and stuff. So that's the thing. And so that's what needs to be focused on. Let the Egyptians be the Egyptians. They don't have to be us. We don't have to be them. They can be what they are, and they're no longer here. And so we should look at them and study their genius as a resource to see if we can use anything to solve our problems today. That's it. That's very, very simple. That's very, very simple.
And that's what everybody else does, really, if you think about it. I mean, it almost seems like the incentive for a certain group of people to learn something is if it was us who did it, while everybody else really don't care about what they're going to take from who, from where. They're gonna take anything that works, if whether it's from black people, yellow people, orange people, green people. If it works, we are going to take it and we are going to own it. And that's how you see all the different levels where how people function, because anybody who actually is there to actually just take what works and utilize it, they function differently, and the outcomes of everything that they do is different, as opposed to a group of people who will be like, I will only take this if it's from me, but I will not take anything else that I know probably works, but it's from people I don't consider my people, so I'm not gonna use it. That mentality, when you see how everybody else is the classes that we have now, and where everybody's placed, who's below, who's above, you see like that, how the effects of that kind of mentality. So, and I think that's what most people kind of do, and it's wrong. Like, if are you only going to study ancient Egypt if the people are, if the people are, you're told that the people are black, or does it really matter? If it works, it works. Why not take that? Like, we know math works, we use it. We don't care who invented math, right? We know Facebook works. We don't care who invented it. We use it,
Yeah, that's a good point, because that speaks to the hypocrisy. Because listen, roughly 75% of everything that you use in your home right now, and I'm speaking to anybody listening and everybody on the panel, including myself, about 75% of the actual things that we use or have in our house is made in China. Okay. But we don't identify as Chinese. But a lot of things we use and make use of and apply in our life, and are important things that we use and everything, are made in China. The internet right now, the social media, Facebook, you mentioned Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, all those are owned by Facebook, the company, and stuff like that. That's not us, but we'll use it and not say anything. We'll leverage it. We'll use it to our benefit. We'll use it to our detriment, whatever, but we use it and everything. So we have no problem when it comes to stuff like that. But yet, when we're studying these things like ancient Egypt, for some reason, we fell for the okie doke and we got stuck on whether or not they're black, as if that matters in the big picture. It only matters if we're trying to if we have a need for the self-esteem and feel good. Because if we are black and they're black and they're described as such a great civilization, stuff like that, then that boosts our collective self-esteem. Like they're us and we're them type of thing. And so now, of course, that will matter. The same way, in a similar way, and I'm going to the extreme, a parent is proud of their child who gets an award for doing something. Like, yeah, that's my son over there. You know, my son dunked on Jordan, or, you know, he got the MVP and whatnot. That's my son. That's my boy. That's my boy. And you feel proud about that because that's I produced that. So there's a closeness. So we want to claim things as our own for that feeling, for that feel good, pride and stuff like that. And we do that. So there's no problem with that. The point with this, though, we got 6 decades of this argument going on. And nobody's trying to make a conclusion. So people who don't know any better, not trying to put in the work, they're not trying to survey the existing scholarship. They just want to skip all of that, microwave all of that stuff, nuke it, but then want to sit there and argue whether Egyptians are black or not, as if that mattered. Because whatever works. I'm telling you, when the Chinese come out with something, listen, PlayStation. I bet you if I if I were to go around in the conscious community homes, I bet you a lot of people got PlayStation in their house. And they'll use it. They'll use the cell phones that are manufactured, even Apple cell phones. Apple's a company, American-based company, but the components and stuff, they come from elsewhere. I mean, we know how that works. I'm looking at something right here, made in China. Made in China. But anyway, so I don't want to harp on that. But here's the point, and I'm gonna move on, is that if we were to use history properly, if we use history as a resource, as a resource that we can mine and pull from to utilize today to solve our problems and to clear a pathway for future, then we're leveraging it in a beneficial way. But if we're going to look in the past and use it as a screenshot, just as a picture on the wall, just to discuss all the time, then we're doing it a disservice. We're actually disrespecting the past. We and that's not good. If we're just going to use our past as a snapshot, as just a painting on the wall, and we just keep talking about the painting. Oh, look at that over there. Oh, look at that. That's real nice over there. Instead of using it as a resource, then where's the value in that? Where's the value in that? And cultures, intact cultures, no matter where it is around the globe, they understand that culture is a living, breathing thing. It's not stuck. It's not static. It's dynamic. And cultures adjust. Cultures evolve, because if they don't, they're going to become extinct. And that's what happens. Cultures are they have a life cycle. They die. Cultures can die. Just like species of animals, if it doesn't evolve to produce at a reproductive age of reproduction, to advance the species forward, then it's going to die out. And that's what happened to cultures. Cultures that don't evolve and keep up, they will eventually die out. And that's what happens. And during the die out process, it's not an overnight thing, but while it dies out, first, before dying, it gets sick. Before getting sick, it gets infected. Just like a living organism. Cultures get infected, the infection spreads, it overwhelms the immune system of the culture cannot handle it, and it slowly decays. That's what happens to cultures. And that's what happened to ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, aka Kemet. That's what happened. There's no one thing that destroyed Kemet. It got infected, got sick, got overwhelmed, and it died. And we can name other cultures the same way. Civilizations or cultures did the same thing. You know, you get taken over by external thing to where the culture can no longer be identified. It gets absorbed in other cultures to where the identity of it is too blurred. And that blurred and non-identity, we say, hey, the culture is gone. All right. So anyway, just like humans, like right now, Homo sapiens sapien, that's who we are living today. But there were other humans that existed that no longer exist today. We're the ones that survive. You know? So anyway, so again, the link is in the chat. It's pinned to the top. So anybody's welcome. And you know, I don't want to rant on. I mean, you know, I kind of talk a lot because I don't like dead silence. So, you know, when I think that people are, you know, nobody has something to say, I'm gonna keep on talking. But if you have something to say, I don't mind being interrupted for that purpose. So just, you know, kind of interject and just let me know if you got a topic or you got a question or something to share, then go for it.
I see somebody raise their hand.
Oh, in the okay, yeah, I was looking at the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
It was me. Thank you, sister. Night, everyone. I'm Duarte Odara. I've been here in other discussion. I don't know if you remind me. I was with the AKA Escriba. We talked a little about tarot and something. I'm from Brazil.
You're from Brazil, right?
Yeah, I'm from Brazil.
Okay.
Okay, peace, everyone. It's
Peace.
good to be here again. You were talking, Ujao, about the things and the work of Sesh today. He has a special challenge because, for example, right here in Brazil, what you call the conscious community, we still, for various reasons, still call ourselves negros, Negro movement, Movimento Negro. Even people like Abdias Nascimento or Carlos Moore bringing here the teachings of Garvey, the teachings of, for example, Richard Moore, who was one of the ancestors who studied about the etymology of the word and the thing that it brings. We have a phenomenon right here that in my studies, I discovered that it is something that is still happen in the diaspora, which is, for example, although that knowledge is already spread along various the Bible libraries, still we need to have to bring almost a magical element to present the content itself of the Egyptians, because before we try to speak anything, the people intercept us and ask about, why do I need this? Why do you bring something so old, already dead, and things like that? So
Yes.
we got the challenge that, for example, the work of Africology here in Brazil face this first challenge in its own environment, because the people ask first what the necessity we have of it is still the same challenges, not the same, of course, but the core challenge that, for example, Yokanan, Diop faced of the tribalisms, still it has a strong claw today. It's one of the challenges. So I wanted to share with you guys, to you brothers and sisters, so if I can find some light on it.
Yeah. So, I get the same question a lot, and I like, I'm asked that question directly a lot, and then I see it come up a lot, outside of me. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier. The reason why people ask that question is because it's hard to see the value in studying something so old and so far removed. Because one, this is the thing, Egypt itself as a material culture is in ruins. Like over there in the Arab Republic of Egypt today, Egypt is basically their cash cow in tourism. So they preserve the temples and the artifacts and things because it's very attractive for tourism and all of that stuff. So the material culture is dead. Everything is in ruins. A lot of it's preserved though for the age that it is. I mean, it's well preserved because of the natural climate and the desert and stuff like that. It actually preserved things very well considering. But aside from that, the language itself is considered a dead language. So no one's going to be walking down the street speaking ancient Egyptian. You can't go to the store and ask for some groceries in the ancient Egyptian language. So it doesn't seem very practical in that way either. And what else? And then the people, the ancient Egyptians themselves is said to have died out or absorbed so much it's too obscure to know who they would be today, And so those are the three things that lead people to think, oh, I don't need to study Egypt. Why should I study ancient Egypt? It's not going to put money in my pocket. It's not going to put food on my table, and I can't use it. So it goes back to what I'm saying. Anybody that thinks along those lines, they're not used to looking at history in general, or specifically cultural history of specific cultures as a resource. And that's the key. We have to look at it as a resource. It's almost like for example, where I live at right now, I live not too far from me, within driving distance. There is there's a automobile place called Pull Apart or something like that. It used to be called Pull Apart, and it's a whole bunch of cars, used cars and old cars that have been in accidents or whatever the case is. And so people go there to salvage car parts, really good car parts. So the car may be total, but some part in it could still be brand new and useful. And so some people use that place as a resource to fix cars. So they go and find the same car. So a Honda Accord. They'll go there, they'll look for the same year and model of their Honda Accord, and they'll go in there and they'll find whatever part that's still good, and they'll use it. So they're using that place as a resource. Although that car can't drive, but they're using parts of it as a resource to solve their problem now, which is their car they're using now. Something went wrong and they need a part. So I just give that analogy because people don't look at history that way enough. And they don't look at Egypt that way. So we need to tap into the genius of Egypt to see what's applicable, what can be used to solve our problems today. And until people start to look at it that way, we're going to get those kind of questions. And people are actually, not the opposite of encouraging. They're discouraging people from learning it because they feel it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. That language is old, it's dead, it's not useful. You hotep yourself to death, and all that kind of stuff. And that's
That's all I wanted to know, because it's like I wanted to know the practicalities that we could use today, instead of trying to make it an identity or something. Like, I'm not really concerned about who they are or what am I to them. I just want to know, how did they, build what they have and what they use to do that.
Now
we have sorry, but still there, we have some work to do until that moment, because in one way or the other, we are still doing archaeology. The concepts, archaeology of the concepts, archaeology of the own methodologies that they used in things like that, and these take time. And in that time, we have to find some ways to deal with that thirst, that sense of emergency that our environment is creating in us. Because although the things you talk is for sure the center of the drive of this kind of questions and this kind of urgency, we still got some bit of sauce, some sauce of this urgency of the stressed moment. So we still had to deal with that another sauce, which is the urgency, who make the people ask with in a strong way. Before anything, they don't want to wait. The simple fact to know that you need to do the archaeological work, search for the schemes for the structure of that particular Honda, if we can stay at the analogy. That is one problem.
Yep. Yeah. So but see, so I'm glad you said that, because as a result of that problem, people always tend to want to microwave Kemet. So they want to bypass the hard work and the time it takes to do it properly. They want to fast forward and just talk about Egypt in a very fanciful way, a very commercial and romanticized way. And they just talk about surface things. Everybody wants to talk about the pyramids, the Great Pyramid, not even all the pyramids, just the three pyramids in Giza. They want to talk about certain temples, the Sphinx, these highly commercialized discussions, but never really want to put in the time, slow it down, put in the time. Because here's the thing too, let me say this. Egyptology as a discipline started in the early 1800s. From the moment that Champollion is given credit for decipherment, that was the birth of Egyptology. So from that point until now, there's a wealth of information about Egypt that's been written. And so it's a big job to just take a survey of all of the existing scholarship and see if we're ever going to write a paper today or try to advance knowledge. One of the first steps to do any kind of scholarship on something to advance knowledge, you have to show and prove that you've do a literature review first. You have to do a survey of the existing scholarship and what the existing arguments are before you can even attempt to present something new. And so people don't want to put in that work. So they skip all of that. They demonize it. Actually, they say, man, people are anti-science or anti all that stuff just because they want to bypass that and just talk about Egypt in a superficial way. Oh, are the Egyptians black? Are the Egyptians gay? Did they have electricity and stuff? I mean, did the aliens build the pyramids? You know, all that kind of stuff. It keeps going on and on. Nobody is like digging hard anymore. And so that's a problem. And because of that, to the onlookers, like, man,
Telepathy. They talk about telepathy too.
yeah, telepathy, the ethers, and all that.
Oh man, they do.
So, but I'm saying, at the end of the day, when the smoke clears, people are left with a sour taste in their mouth about Egypt. They're like, I don't feel like, why should I study that stuff? It's dead. It's not practical. It's not useful, you know, and stuff. And they don't see the value in it.
I
And
just
so
see the same thing.
So
Like-
well, what I try to do is to speak on things that will raise the awareness of the value. So I'm gonna give one quick example. In the conscious community or whatever, we're always crying and complaining that we have no unity. Like, we need unity. We need to unify. Why can't we unify and this and that? Well, ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, Kemet, is a civilization that perfected unity, because it wasn't unified, then it got unified, and then it had a consistent unification for over 3,000 years. So if for nothing else, we can study, how did they unify? What were the ways in which the Egyptians were able to unify at 5,000 or so many odd years ago, without the unification tools that we have accessible to us today? Because they didn't have television, they didn't have fast communication, no email, no postal service, none of that. And so how did they unify that area of geography, the entire now, whatever the square mileage is of Egypt? How were they able to get all the people in sync and unified like that? And so if we studied that, if that was a research project taken on real serious, then we can pull from that and learn from that to see what we can do today to form a coalition or confederacy of unification today. And that's just one example. And that's a very important and valuable thing, because that's what people complain about today. We're not unified. We're scattered around. We're not unified. We have no unity. We have no agency. We have no statehood and this and that. Well, we got civilizations we can learn from. So why not study and learn that? And that's just one of many, so just giving that as an example.
It was a great one. You talked about that. I remember the technological use of the script as create this system of messages. For example, it's kind of internet today, like internet today.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but the way it functioned, the messages being passed rapidly from one country to another, passing all sorts of information, not only about what happened with someone, but all the description of a judgment, for example.
You broke up on the last part. What you said? You said you said judgment.
Yeah. The judgment which was passed from one state to another to one sesh to another sesh, for example, to one scribe to another scribe, which in some way will get to the Nezubichi.
Right. And that's so, and this is something that I recommend, right? This is a project I recommend, and I would love for people to take it on, and I would love to be a part of it, is to do a thorough investigation of the Egyptian administration, the hierarchy of the administrative bodies in Kemet. in order to see one to learn from it and to be informed about it, but to see, use it as a resource to see what is applicable today, because that was a key. Their setup, their administrative setup and hierarchy, from the king all the way down to the Saketi, which was they translate as a peasant or farmer. From that to that, their hierarchy was really, really good, because it was done in such a way where it kept the glue of the culture and civilization together for over 3,000 years. And and when I say that, of course they had a couple of internal problems, intermediate periods and stuff, but for the most part, they were an identifiable culture and civilization for over 3,000 years. And that is definitely worth studying in a very serious way, the Egyptian administration. Now, there's a book, it's pretty expensive, that has done a survey on that already. And so some research, if people want to take that on, it could start there and then expand out and with the literature review and stuff like that. And so that's one example of something that's realistic that people could take on. But yet, and now I'm gonna go on a little soapbox. I'm saying, instead of people doing that, they want to argue whether the Egyptians are black, whether they're African, whether they're black, whether they're gay, and this, that, and the third, when there's so many other things that we could be focused on to look into, So that's just another example, a realistic example of something that I actually recommend and would love to do it. That's something I couldn't do that by myself. And I have the book already. I have the book already that would kick something like that off. Written by Hornung and his partner. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Egyptian administration. And Niger Strudwick is another author that did that. Between those two books, man, that is a very good start on that research project.
Let's get it.
That is something to start off with, because that's very important. Because you reminded me of that when you said, when you mentioned the Sesh passing things on, and then it gets to the Nisubiti and so on. That's like that hierarchy. You have the visor or the Chati, the Nisubiti, the king. You have the Hati-A, the Heripat. You have all these different. You had these social labels. Then you had these functional labels that people had. If we start to organize that and see how they had things structured, man, that will go a long way. Yeah.
I'm interested because, for example, all of that was under the operational system of Ma'at. It is kind of the Windows today, or the Ubuntu, or it was their kernel, the Ma'at. And so, which leads me to my research. I'm trying to, from now, I ended one of my researching that was to get to Egypt, and I did that through the work of Ptahhotep. So I want to expand this, trying to first I acknowledge and searched about the ethic aspects of the work of Ptahhotep. So, but the first thing which took my attention was the logic aspect, and that's one. It's one of my aims to know about the logic. How I mean, make I don't know, a taxonomy of their logic. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. Really, I'm trying to search which works has its best example of the aspects of their frame of organization.
Well, there you go. So I like the way you painted that picture, because that's exactly the kind of picture that I'm used to. So Ma'at would be the underlying operating system, and then you have the kernel or whatever, like how Windows, and you said Ubuntu, and these things that underlie everything. And so you have the structure that's built on it. And me being a programmer and stuff, that's like those are really good analogies to use. We have object-oriented language where we create functions and classes that work together to form a system. And it's all about systems. And once we understand that, how the Egyptians put together their system, literally their administrative system, then we can actually at least look and see what's applicable. Because although we're not, we don't live in the past, and although we don't live near a river, we don't live in a desert, we don't live in a valley and delta area and stuff like that, the principles are timeless. Maybe not the surface realizations of them, but the underlying principles are timeless. It doesn't matter what era of time you're in, you know.
Yeah, not just like not just that. We got to remember that I don't know for how reason people still stuck in the I don't know. I don't want to call it theory, but in the notion of the human beings are like something new. We've been here for
Right.
at least 200,000 years.
Yeah.
Just like we are now.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So
and
it's not something. The past here is just a word. It's just a term we use to treat with something which is far from us.
Yeah.
But it's not something lost. Not something that we cannot reach. It's there.
Exactly. And that's a good point, because what it is, it's like, you know, they there's a phrase, hidden in plain sight. And so perspective, because this is how magicians and illusionists, I used to study magicians and illusionists, because one, I don't believe like to a magician. I mean, I did a whole presentation on the relationship between magic, God, magic, and ignorance and belief versus science, and so on and so forth. So I went all the way in on it. But in a nutshell, let's take a magician, an illusionist, a person who's on stage and they're performing magic tricks in front of an audience. From the magician's perspective, they're not doing magic. They're actually performing a skill. But now to the audience, it's magic, but it's only magic based on their ignorance of how it's done. So they don't know how it's done, so they're attracted to it and they're wowed by it. But to the magician, he's just simply doing something that's a skill set to him. And then to another magician who may be sitting in the audience, he's not wowed. He's actually just looking at how well the skill was executed. So magician to magician, they're like, oh, you did that very well. But to a person who's ignorant, they're like, oh, wow, how did you do that? Oh my God, and stuff. So it's perspective.
The magician is even boring.
Yeah. To another magician, it's like, oh, okay, I did that. I know that. But you got to give props. Like, oh, you did that good. So, but my point is that we've created this veil, this illusionary veil that's covering things that are really still there. And like when you brought up humans, we've been on the planet for at least, like you said, at least 200,000 years. So there's a lot of things that are not new. They're just hidden in plain sight right there for us to like just focus again and utilize it. And so that's the example. Like that's what I was saying with Kemet. These are things that are timeless. Like they don't have an expiration date. They're useful, and we don't understand. Like I always talk about these two layers in linguistics. There's two layers of language. Period. Was more than two, but these two I talk about is the etic level and the emic level of language. And so for a quick example, let's see what's a good. Okay, so for example, we have a grapheme. Okay. As a matter of fact, let me just share my screen real quick because somebody told me, because I always use the whiteboard, and when I have these open discussions, I don't use it enough. So let me pull it up. Okay. So we have these two levels, and hopefully everybody can see my screen. Yeah. Okay. So we have the
Yeah.
emic level, and it's called emic like that. And then we have another level above it, which is called the etic level. Okay. And in between, it's a line here. I'm just gonna put this line here just to make it clear, visually clear for everybody. Okay. So we have these two levels, emic and etic. Emic is underneath the hood. So it's hidden. Like we don't pay attention to it because it's beneath the surface. Then the etic level is what percolates to the surface. These are the visual realizations. Okay. So now in my example of what I just said, we have what's called a grapheme. So let me put that here. Grapheme. All right. And then on the etic level, the equivalent on the etic level of a grapheme would simply be a graph. Okay. Now to illustrate that, what that actually is, let me just move this over. Now to illustrate what that is, let me just type this letter right here, the letter B. Okay, this is a grapheme. Okay, this letter B. Now, this represents the underlying abstraction of the character B. Now, what we actually see and what's realized or manifests on the surface will be something different. So let me just put this here, and I'll put this. I'm just gonna put it in commas. No, actually, let me put this one. Man, it's not even letting me do a lowercase b. Goodness gracious, come on now. Give me 1 second. I just want to illustrate this real quick, and I actually already have this illustrated somewhere. But for the sake of speed, I'm just going to do it right now and just do a couple of them. Okay, I'm just going to do 3 just for the sake of illustration. So this is a B, but I'm going to do something that's going to change it. And let's see, I'm going to put this in that. So that's the letter B. And we're going to change this one to, let's say, this letter B. Well, that don't look too different. I'm trying to make sure it looks different to y'all. This one. Okay. So now, for my illustration, this is the abstract underlying character B as a grapheme. Now, this underlying character B or grapheme B or character in a script can be represented in multiple ways called graphs. So this lowercase b, and this lowercase b all represent the same B, which is here, but it just appears to be different. The form of it is different. Okay. And so this is the two levels. So what I mean when I was talking about the underlying principles are timeless is that how it percolates and manifests may come in different forms, but it's all really this coming from the same emic level or abstract level, the same things. And so these things are hidden, and we don't pay attention to this phenomenon that happens. And this doesn't only occur in language, it occurs in existence, period. The emic and etic levels. So I just wanted to illustrate that as an example of what people don't realize, that's going on, that we kind of got to promote and push and advocate so that we can start paying attention to it and seeing the value of doing this kind of work, of what we're talking about. But anyway, so I mean, I don't want to keep going. I'll keep this up as an illustration, though. But everybody understand that, I know I kind of rushed through that, but hopefully people can understand. Now, this is just one example of the two levels, and I chose grapheme versus graph, but you have phoneme versus phone.
Yeah, we still got stuck in that thing because the grapheme B is with a veil of the color phenomenon.
Yeah. And so when I was talking about magic and things like that, it's, the perspective, if we don't know, like it's really rooted in ignorance. What we don't know, we're not going to know or be aware or conscious of to even look. And so that's our job as, teachers and instructors and stuff like that, to point out. And that's what actually the word teacher means. It actually means to point out things, and educate means to draw out of people of that which is already in them. So we need to wear both hats. We need to become teachers and educators in one, to advocate this, to make the paradigm shift, to change the way that we look at things collectively. And that's our job as teachers and educators. We need to point these things out and let people become aware of it, and keep it going. And that's what, part of the big thing that what I do all day, every day, point these things out and show, demonstrate, and become aware, because a lot of stuff is through ignorance. And that's the thing. So we live in an illusionary world, and we operate that way. And that has served us in a very negative way, up to this point, while others have benefited from it. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of show that as an example. But I know we kind of talked about that a while, and I don't want to skip if anybody else may have something to bring up on the panel. Does anybody else have something? Because I don't want us to kind of hog the mic onto one issue or whatever. So anybody else on the panel had something to elaborate?
Yeah, I got this one question from yesterday's conversation about how the pyramids were built. I may be trying to throw a clue out, but maybe because they said they don't know how it's been built, but maybe do they have a maybe do they know that they have a do they know how the mastabas were built?
The mastabas?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Because that would be like the base of the pyramid.
Yeah, I mean, but see, the building of the mastabas gets kind of folded into the conversation about the building of the pyramids, because of the what the mastabas was for, tombs or burials and things. And they're saying pyramids or mere was tombs and burials, although they didn't find a body in the Great Pyramids, and all that good stuff. But in terms of the in terms of the engineering and how it was done, they have less debate and concerns about the mastabas than they do the pyramids. The pyramids are still, debated, and there's hypotheses that are, pushed forward. Where the mastabas, you don't see that much. You don't see that kind of arguing or debating for those. You don't see that.
Yeah, I was just figuring that they, that could be the starting point of the other, but I guess not.
The one solution would be dealing with the trigonometrical aspects of the geometrical aspects of the culture. For example, the Pythagoras theorem, the so-called Pythagoras theorem, for example, would be one way to translate the rules of mathematics, for example, calculating the triangular area, the circular area, the extension of the ray, the circumference, for example.
Yeah. And
that brings no doubt.
No, go ahead.
yeah, topics like that, it is arid to this kind of discussions of the obscurity.
Yeah, and so but listen, this is I don't know if any of you all noticed this, but what I've observed in doing this work for the time that I've been doing it is I noticed that people lean towards having conversations about the most obscure things about Kemet, and they want to like run away from the things that we actually can know. Like I've noticed that like people will, okay, I'll give you a quick example. Kemet is a very well documented culture and civilization, because the papyri, the stelae, the tombs, the temples, and everything, there was a lot of documentation and writing that was well preserved to this very day. But Kush, Napata, Napta Playa, Kush, Napata, Meroe, and those places south of Kemet are less documented. You know, they we don't have as much documentation in terms of writing and stuff like that, where we can have a window into the psychology of the people like we can with Kemet. And I noticed that a lot of people will skip over Kemet because that means a lot of work to do, but they'll want to raise up and talk about Kush, or talk about Kushites and Nubians and things like that, where we don't have as much because it's less work to do, and there's no way to kind of falsify what's being said, so people have room to kind of make up and put spin, kind of elaborate and embellish a bit. And so I find that to be true, just my observations of what people like to bring up. And I say that because the pyramids, how they were built, how old they are, the Sphinx, how that was carved, how old it is, those are very frequent topics that people bring up because it's because of that obscurity there. But the moment you want to bring up something that we can know the whole A through Z of it, people skip that. They kind of skip over stuff like that. So it's just interesting.
Yeah, you already dealt with the Shabaka stone here.
Yeah, the Shabaka stone. Yep.
Man, that thing, just that text, we could take a variety of good resources to us today, from psychology to logic to philosophy. I mean, science. Man, there is something I would call magical, but because of the topic of the power that this word has, is the manufacturing, the structure of science is there.
Yes, and we can. You're right. Matter of fact, I think, man, I one book I recommend, or one text I should say, I recommend everybody that studies Kemet should become familiar with, is the book that's now known as the Book of Knowing the Transformations of Ra and Overthrowing of Apep. That book right there, or that text right there, is a very what I want to say, it's a psychological text. It's a creation story, it's a quote unquote creation story, or cosmogonical story, or whatever, cosmological story, but it taps into psychology a whole lot, and I don't think people are really like aware of it or look into it enough to be aware of it. So that's another one. That the Rhine's mathematical papyrus that people call it, but it's really the Ahmos papyrus, which lays out Tep Hesed, which is the correct method of basically it kind of mirrors and mimics the scientific method that we use today. The Shabaka stone that you mentioned, all of these things are big things that we should be dealing with and learning from. And I don't see enough of that being discussed and talked about, but I do it. I'm not a naive. I do acknowledge that there are prerequisites that are needed before, people can really talk about those things, to have a really good informative conversation about it. Like, we can't just like jump into it and talk about those things, because then we'll be treating it on the surface like we do everything else.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the one of the step of the letter, which for some reason is scaring everybody.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work. It's very intimidating because it's a lot of work to take on, and I get it. People have 9-to-5 jobs, people have to make a living, and it doesn't seem important or valuable enough for people to disrupt what they already have going on to go down that road. And I don't fault people for that.
Yeah.
But what I have a problem with is when those same people will all of a sudden make time to try to argue about Kemet from a place of ignorance, though.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, what you're saying, like, I mean, if they're busy and you don't have time, but you have 4 hours, 5 hours to discuss that, obviously you have time, because all you need in a week is like on a daily basis, an hour, 2 hours. So in a week, probably 5 to 10 hours. But if you can spend 5 hours in one day, to argue over something, I mean, yeah, they have time. It's just that it's like you said, there's the prerequisite needed to have those particular discussions that's what filters lazy people from people who are just want to study, because everybody has Kemet in their mouth, but like you always say, like, people have Kemet in their mouth but don't have Kemet in their mouth. Like, if you're willing to talk about Egypt and you don't know about their language, like, that's crazy. So that's just an excuse for giving lazy people, because they do talk about it. People love to talk about Kemet, as we've seen. So it's just that they don't have that same passion when it comes to studying about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to like, I had to study. I had the thought of studying today planned out for the whole day, because I didn't work today, but I got caught up in so many arguments today that I lost track of time until y'all just started to come on YouTube. Y'all hit the live button on YouTube, and I said, okay, let me slow down.
Like people are putting presentations on a palette, like Nama's palette. Like, I mean, if you could research on just one palette, I mean, I mean, look, the beginner's class, how do we say it goes? Like, you need about 12 weeks, but you could actually, like 12 weeks of one, or an hour or two a week. So you can imagine how much people spend doing all these, YouTube tours, running around just to talk about palettes and all kinds of things, pictures they're reading on Kemet. So if you're reading pictures, you can read the text.
Well, look, I'm glad you mentioned the Nama's palette. That's another example of obscurity. So anyone who's a student of this stuff, we all know that the palette that's we call it Namir's palette is very obscure, because it doesn't have a lot of text that will inform us of what's going on. There's imagery there, but not a lot of text, not a lot of glyphs to explain what's what. And so this say it again.
And a whole symphony of maybes.
Exactly. It's a whole ocean of maybe this, maybe that, and stuff like that. And so people will focus on that because of that. And that's another example of what I mean, because it leaves room to embellish and just make up stuff where you can't falsify, you can't fact check things, and so, and that, that's just another example. And I'm like, well, Namir's palette, let's let it be what it is. First of all, we know it's a palette. It's a palette, and we know the design and how it's made and what it was made for. because of the, circle, the opening to hold substances there, which could answer the so-called quote unquote sauropod, the leopards with the long necks, but I don't want to get into the details of it, but I'm saying that's just another example. A lot of these obscure things, they want to go back to Namir. I'm like, wait a minute.
I observe, excuse me. I observed another phenomenon, which is, for example, we the people normally don't recognize that our script as a drawing too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The habit, the strength of the habit make us forget that we learned to really draw the letters, each letter, each aspect of the letter, just a trace, just a dot, is a drawing, just like the draw of math, for example. The picture is a picture we're doing, but for some reason the aspect of the alphabet, the only phonetical and alphabetical aspect of our script, is making people don't see that connections.
Right.
That is correct. Writing is drawing, basically. It's just that it's the complexity of the patterns that you use on the writing systems we're used to, as opposed to like a proper drawing. But you're drawing at the end of the day, but people forget that. So when they see the Sesh, Medew, Netcher, they can't. Some people can't, like you said, fix their mind to actually understand that they're looking at a writing system, not just like real objects like that per se, and make it magical and all that kind of stuff that people want to do.
And think about this. The age-old saying is that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so imagine if that was like 100% true, then how useful would a picture writing system actually be if every picture could be one of 1,000 meanings? That means it would be totally useless. Totally useless. And so what I always say, in the classes, as far as the glyphs or teeth, they are what they are is different than how they function. And this is something I stress and I slow it down and I explain. What something is and how it functions are two totally different things. All of the glyphs are pictographs. So they're pictures of the natural flora and fauna and man-made objects that were familiar to the people. But how they function is not a pictorial expression. So, and it could function, as a phonograph, logograph, and so on. And that little bit right there is it seems simple to us, but it's a leap for people to grasp because of how our writing systems are today. Especially we use the Latin orthography for writing English and Spanish and all the, a lot of language. We use that Latin orthography and characters, and which don't resemble anything in our surroundings. So we tend to lose that understanding that this is a writing system. This is the visual, when we're looking at the Sesh, this is a visual representation of speech, and it's encoded. And we have to understand the encoding. We have to understand that to be able to read and so on. And that's what the decipherment was all about as far as the script. But then that's still only step one. Step two is once you can read it by decoding what was encoded, now you have to take it a step further, which is a ongoing thing that people don't even realize, is now we have to get to the reality of the figurative expressions in the stuff that we're reading. So like, the example I give all the time is the famous metaphor, I got butterflies in my stomach. So if I were to write that down on a piece of paper, I have butterflies in my stomach, and a person who who doesn't know English, they first have to learn English, the fundamentals of the English language and the writing system, to the point where they could pick up the paper and they could read it and they know what I wrote. I have butterflies in my stomach. They know that much. But now their job would be to try to understand what I meant by it. Because taken literally, they would think that I mean I have the actual insect butterflies in my stomach. And that's crazy. They would laugh at me. They'd be like, oh man, that's crazy. But what I really mean, the reality behind the statement is really nervousness. What I'm saying is that I'm nervous. And so for the foreigner to get to that level, that takes work. And a lot of people are not willing to put in that work to get to that level of understanding. And Kemet is just waiting for that to happen. Is waiting for us to do that. Because all this surface text was done, the way that they wrote was done in the figurative expressions. And I always give examples and stuff all the time. But that's something that people have to understand. And that goes with a lot of these cultures. A lot of these cultures, even the Bible. I don't ever talk bad about the Bible or anything like that, or the Quran, or any so-called scripture or religious book, because I understand the method of documentation for these different cultures. They were not documenting things literally. They were storytellers. They actually invented what we call now figurative expressions. And we don't even look at that as a technology, but the ability to write in a figurative way is, man, that's a genius invention. To double talk, to create metaphors, hyperbole, similes, punning of words and stuff, to take homophones and to link them together just based on sound. All those kinds of things. These things were done intentionally and man, genius. Because they had to do it. Their survival depended on it. Because writing is only 5,000 years old, give or take. And so they had to have a way of storing the data of the day for the future generations orally. And so how do you commit things to memory? They don't have computers. They don't have paper or writing to log something in a notebook or anything. So they had to do it orally. So they had to use language to communicate in the real time, in a literal sense, but they had to store knowledge in the same language, but in a figurative sense. So they created a parallel language within a language that today we call figurative expressions. And so we have to learn that and how to get to the reality, how to uncover and get to that reality. And man, I'm telling you, that is the work. That's the real work. And not too many people are trying to do that. They're not trying to do that. So we gotta get back into that.
I was thinking if one of the reasons could be accessibility to the text, maybe. What you thought about?
I'm sorry, say it again.
One of the reasons which I think it may be is certain aspects of not availability of the text itself. It's more easy to find the translations, the various translations, even the English one, the French one, the German one, but the text itself, whether it's in Sesh Medew already, not in Hieroglyphic, or is translated or transliterated, which don't help so much as if we could see the original text, because I mean the work of revision No, the copies was great. In one way or another, errors occurred. So, I mean, I think you get my point.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. The inaccessibility to primary sources basically is what you're saying, and that definitely plays a part in it. Less now than it did before, because now they've digitized images and put them online. So, like for example, the Metropolitan Museum, the Louvre, the British Museum, and the Cairo Museum, they all have websites now, and if you subscribe to them, they have a lot of images of the primary sources. Like I know me myself, I've contacted the British Museum many times, and I've gotten nice quality images of different papyri, you know, um and stuff like that. So that having access is definitely a factor, but it's less now, you know, in today's time than it was, you know, um, a few decades ago and stuff like that. It was real. It was way harder. It was much harder. So, and that's the appreciation we need to have for scholars. You know, 30 years ago, it's the same way libraries. Like, you know, when I was little, we had to actually go into a library, go to the calling card catalog, pull out the card, walk down the aisle and find the book, you know, and then bring it to the counter and check it out and all that kind of stuff. Whereas today, man, you just pull it up online and that's it, you know. So the same thing, but that
Yeah.
you know, I believe it's a factor, but it's getting better. We have access to a whole lot of things, a whole, you know, a lot. We have access to enough that keeps us busy. I'll tell you that much. We have
Yeah.
access to, but it's expensive now. You know, you know, now we got to talk finances too, because to really get quality resources, you gotta have to spend some money though. You know,
A lot of. Buy some Cadillacs.
yeah, exactly. We're gonna have to do that. And see, that's the thing about going through a institution, because institutions will fund research. And if we formed an institution and formed it correctly, we can get government, or we can find a way to get funded to do these kinds of things, build up the interest, build up the importance or the value of it to where people would fund it. And that's, you know, that's just something that we don't really talk about either. People would rather fund
Yeah.
a fussing match, misnomered a debate, but not fund like actual research and buying
Yeah.
actual resources.
That's sad.
That's that. Yeah. That's one of the points too. And maybe is some RBG blue pill, which for some reason I don't know, because I am I'm a RBG guy, but I don't know for what reason money, resources, material resources are taboo in our shores.
Yeah, so we have to change that. And I'm saying, you know, like we got to stop pointing a finger and just start to address our own elephants in the room type stuff.
Okay.
You know, and so that's, you know, that's what I'm saying. So we gotta really get on the ball and just be
Great.
honest. And that's where character comes into play. Our collective character, like, you know, individuals, we, you know, different people may have different characteristics and character itself, but collectively we got to do a lot better, because we have to have good enough character to where we could be honest and objective about ourselves and accept things for what they are in order to make the change and become that change that we look for. And we just got to be honest that we're way behind. We're way behind. Because I, you know, for the over 10 years, I've rubbed elbows with professors, students of professors were dealing with the language. And I've met people who've learned the language for different reasons and stuff like that. And just doing that alone, it just gives me insight to how far behind we are. You know, when I say we, I'm doing that air quote we, collectively, conscious community and stuff like that. We're way behind. Way behind.
Yeah.
Way behind. I was trying to pull up an example of a papyrus I got, you know, type of quality, but it'll take me too long.
Yeah, speaking of papyrus, Sean has been working on some translation and transliteration from papyrus of grapes, and he needs some help.
Oh, let me look at the chat. He's in the chat.
He's been working on it for a few months, you know.
Oh, Sean, send it. Inbox me the papyrus.
Nah. Somebody said that there is a papyrus, and he just wants to fact check and see if it exists.
Oh. I'm saying, what is it? What is he asking about? Hold on, let me catch up.
It's called the papyrus of grapes. Papyrus of grapes. I don't know.
Papyrus of grapes. Of wine or grapes?
Grapes. That's the name.
Are they green grapes or purple grapes? I mean, are they seedless or seeded grapes? Which one is it?
Yeah, we're trying to find out.
The papyrus of grapes?
That's correct, grapes.
I'm not familiar unless it's known by another name. I'm not too familiar with a papyrus of grapes.
Right. Somebody told him that it exists, so he was saying that. But it's keeping an open mind, so he's trying to see.
Yeah, I'm saying that would be. I mean, if something like that exists by that name, I would be interested. I'm not familiar with that. A papyrus of grapes? No, I can't think of anything that I've come across. I mean, I have papyrus with vignettes of grapes being
that's
and stuff. But papyrus of grapes? Nah, I don't think somebody made that up. I don't know.
Nah, he says he's not making it up.
No, I'm saying somebody else, Sean might not have made it up, but somebody might have made that a papyrus of grapes. I don't know, unless it's papyrus of wine papyri. The making of wine or wine labeling and something like that, but grapes. I don't know. It'd be interesting. So yeah, Sean, if you find it or find something else, let me know. We could deal with it.
Speaking of which, since we're talking about fruit, I kind of remembered somebody saying that Egypt, I think they made watermelon from cucumbers.
What?
They made their own GMOs back then, and they made a watermelon out of cucumbers.
Wow.
Oh, so like the Egyptians invented watermelon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. That's
That's a one-time thing. I remember that.
That would be interesting that they invented watermelon. Now I'm gonna say this though. I mean, in my understanding of Egyptian dietary things, there's a couple of books that I have and I read, but it's been a minute, so I'm just pulling it out, out of from my memory. So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I do know that among the fruits there are fruits that's being translated as watermelon. Now, whether they made it out of cucumbers and all that kind of stuff, that I don't know about all that, but they did have fruit these fruits are being translated as watermelon. I don't remember what the actual word is off the top of my head, but I do remember that being on the list because, what another interesting topic that I would love to get into with a group of people at some point is the issue of health in ancient cultures in general, but specifically for now, Kemet, because that's where my focus is. How did they look at health, and how, or if it was different than how we view health today? And I have some ideas of what I already see now, but it'll be interesting to have a conversation about that. The whole concept of Ankh Uja Seneb or Ankh Weja Seneb, those three overlapping concepts unifying, is very interesting. And I think that's worth an entire series of conversations about that. Uncle Jasaneb, life, prosperity, say life, prosperity, and health. D&E Uncle Jasaneb, may he be given, or I've given him, or I give life, prosperity, and health. Me, Ra, Jet, like Ra forever and stuff. You'll see that in the text. But it's interesting. Anyway, I just want to bring that up, kind of throw that out there. I'm throwing out future suggestions of conversations. I know Mika had a conversation. You want to talk about some DNA stuff tonight or something. I'm surprised you didn't bring anything up. See, Mika sitting here quiet. She probably fell asleep again. But yeah,
No,
so
I'm listening.
okay. But Zane, though, I do believe the Egyptians, we had fruit that we are translating as watermelon. I mean, matter of fact, I know that there's fruit that we do translate as watermelon. I remember that being on the list. I just don't recall the exact name.
Yeah, I'm sure they had something to do with the beginning of agriculture, but for the most part, I don't know if they I don't know if they altered, vegetables in the fruit.
Like from cucumber? Yeah, that would be interesting.
Well, I mean, but here's the thing, though. I mean, just look at it. Watermelon, cucumber are in the same. They're closely related. They're vine fruits.
Yeah, they vine fruit, and they do look alike, but
and they smell very similar.
Yeah.
If you get a organic, freshly grown watermelon, and the same with a cucumber, and when you cut both of them, they're similar in the way they grow. They're similar in how they smell a bit, and the whole thing.
This one come up sugarless. Yes.
So I mean,
I've heard that vegetables are just sugarless fruit.
No, I mean, okay. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I had a conversation earlier today, totally separate out of Egypt stuff. But what was interesting is that fruit is, in the minds of most people, fruit is synonymous with sweet. Like the moment you say fruit, or if you use the adjectival form of fruit and say fruity, oh, this tastes fruity. Yeah. What people mean behind that is really sweet. And so fruit became synonymous with sweet. And by it becoming synonymous with sweetness or sweet, we don't see all fruits as fruits. And so a lot of things that we don't even call fruit is actually a fruit, like peppers. Peppers are fruits. It's not sweet at all.
You can say that, yeah.
No, they are. I mean, peppers, green pepper, red pepper that people get, those are fruits.
Yeah,
I call them pepper fruits, actually.
Tomato.
Tomatoes
fruit.
Yeah.
Tomatoes are fruit, but we kind of like, I know me, I'm gonna speak for myself. I know I never looked at it like that. I thought tomato was a vegetable in my salad, but it's fruit. And there's a criteria for what fruits are, by having a seed or not.
The almonds are fruit.
The key element. You say what? Say it again.
Almonds are a fruit. You just eat the seed.
Oh, the seed of something.
Yeah, the seed of the almond seed actually come from a fruit.
Oh, okay. So I'm saying, yeah. So we're saying that like pumpkin seeds and stuff. Pumpkins are fruit.
And cashews too.
We eat pumpkin seeds, cashews. Yeah, certain things growing on trees and stuff. We don't even realize. Yeah. So I'm just saying, that's just interesting. But I'm saying, but that's how the mind works. That's how the mind works. The psychology. Fruit has become anchored psychologically as sweetness. And so something that's hot to taste is not seen as a fruit, really, like peppers. We don't see it as a fruit. You know, we think of fruits like orange, you know, sweet things and everything. So yeah, that's interesting. But you know, anyway, the diet intake of these cultures and how they saw this stuff is very interesting. But I don't know. Any other thing? I'm trying to keep up with
Yeah.
the chat.
Also a good question from Priestess Rao.
Okay.
Does Sri Lanka's text have a close mathematical link to Egyptian Netcher?
Mathematical link. Okay, we had to kind of elaborate on that. So, Priestess, if you can elaborate on what you're asking, we say mathematical link to it, because I do know that some writing systems are given numerical value. Like I know people do it with the Hebrew characters. They give numerical value to certain characters, even in English and things. And so I just want to kind of clarify on what you mean by a mathematical link, because language, we have to understand what a writing system's purpose is and what language is as well. So, and the difference between language and the writing system, the visual representation of the language, and then what is language. And, you know, we did a whole presentation giving a summary about that, of what language is. You know, what is language, and why is language language? Like, why do we use it? You know, and I always say the gist of it is we use language because to solve a problem, to fill in a gap, an inability, which is telepathy. We're not telepathic creatures, so we have to use language to communicate. And the goal of language, the end goal, when everything is said and done, the end goal of language or communication is a meeting of the mind. So every conversation you get into, that is supposed to be the goal, is a meeting of the mind. So nothing is supposed to be ambiguous. Communication is not supposed to be ambiguous. No ambiguity. And your skill at articulating your thoughts is determined by the level of ambiguity that you have, or that you present. If it's low, then you're good. If it's high, then you need work. If you're talking to people and people are not getting what you're saying, even though you're speaking the same language, then you got to go back to the drawing board. You know, the ability to articulate is just as important as being able to make sounds, you know.
The ABC of Sesh.
Yeah. Okay, so Priestess says, since some information is lost, can we piece together the full structure by embodying other languages like Sri Lanka writing systems? Okay, I'm not exactly sure if I understand your question, but from what I think you're asking, when you say information is lost, let me just say this about Rani Kemet. So first of all, the ancient Egyptian language was indigenously called Rani Kemet, and the writing system that we call hieroglyphs was indigenously called Sesh Medew Netcher. Now, our knowledge of the language is handicapped because we only understand the language through its writing system, and its writing system is in want because there was no documentation of vowels. So we come up short, and we're handicapped on that for the vowels. In terms of its phonology, its full phonology on how we pronounce the words. But now the meaning behind it, we've gotten a whole lot further with. Now, so if you're asking that loss of information in terms of pronunciation and things, can we compare other languages? We don't have to go as far as Sri Lanka and things like that. We can look at more closely related African languages to start to fill in the gaps and connect the dots with more accurate historical pronunciations and the semantic underlying meanings of these words as well. So we don't have to go as far as Sri Lanka to do that. So I just want to make that clear. So we know the closely related languages to the ancient Egyptian language, and we could start to use those as resources and do. But that's the job of a comparatist. That's a historical comparative endeavor. So you have historical comparative linguistics, and those people who do it are comparatists, historical comparatists, and that's what they do. And one of our prominent comparatists is Jean-Claude Mboli, and another one, colleague of mine, Asar Imhotep. People are probably familiar with him. Actually, both by now. People definitely should be familiar with Asar Imhotep. But this is stuff. These are things that they do all the time. So Asar's focus and specialty as a tool, he used historical comparative linguistics. All right, so like I said, I'm not sure if I understand your question, but I'm just assuming what I assume and it acts that way. All right, so or answer that way. So anything else? Was there any other question, Mimikat, did you saw?
Oh, I stepped away for a minute. Let me read.
Oh no, I'm saying, yeah. Did you see any other question? Now, mind you, all the link is to the panels in the chat. So I don't even know.
I think she clarified. So I don't know if you went through that with the clarification. Because
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I spoke on it to the best of what I understand her question to be.
Okay.
Yep. So we got Chris in here, Mika. So Mika, you don't have any topic? Chris, how about you? I know Chris keeps up with the pseudo stuff. Well, I know that's I got to give the first place trophy to Mika.
Now, I've noticed recently that some comedic groups been doing OPET festivals.
Oh, okay.
I was going to bring that up to maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Okay. What they like when you say that them doing it, like what are some of the things? What are some things they do? That they do?
So based on what I had to go back and kind of refresh myself up and read about it. I mean, I'm not saying they should do it like the Rametz did, but it's kind of more like they would gather and I guess complete some initiations in their right or whatever, and museum tours, those kind of things. It's not like what I was reading about. Again, not to say that they should do it that way, but I thought they would do it the way, since they're using the name OPET.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, we got to be mindful of that. And I'm a person that will we should have an understanding of how cultures advance. If the Egyptian culture never died and got infected, got sick and died, that's imagine what it would be today. Like and I had a brief discussion on the difference between a tradition and a culture. Like how do we define those two things? And we look at Egypt as a tradition because it's frozen. Like, it's a snapshot because it's not alive. It's not evolving because it's dead. And so we got to be careful of how we look at it, because we think that those traditions should be fast forwarded into the here and now and kept as is. And we do that with not only ancient Egypt, but also other African traditions, and I speak to that a bit, where, we'll convert to African tradition as if it is something we should be doing right now, when the tradition was created for a era of time and circumstances that got stuck in time to be labeled a tradition in the first place, and then it's a continued practice. But the culture moves forward and moves on and it evolves. And so, anyway, but today, like people who are trying to practice quote unquote comedic practices and things, they will take a snapshot or screenshot of something and then try to do it today, not understanding, how, things unfold or whatever the case is. And, that's something that we just got to be mindful of, so. But anyway, I was saying that to say that OPET, you got to understand the OPET ceremony. Like some people may want to do the stretching of the cord ceremony, knowing good and well we don't have a king, we don't live in a monarchy, and we don't even understand Sashat's role in stretching of the cord. And people want to do a stretching of the cord ceremony when they want to cut the ribbon of a new business that they got. I'm like, what? I mean, I get it, but man, that's like way off. I'm laughing because I actually know somebody that wanted to do a stretching of the cord ceremony for a business that they opened up. And they, good thing they came and asked me. Yep. They asked me for the advice on how to do it. And I was like, man, are you serious? Like opening a business, stretching the cord? Do you know what stretching cord? So I just gave them a lot of things to look into. Anything else? Because I can talk now. I've been hogging the mic. I always hog the mic. I always feel like I'm hogging the mic.
Okay, I see another question. Do we lose value or suffer from our inability to express ourselves today by the lack of not being able to speak the ancient language? And this was from consensually aspiring.
Conscientiously.
Conscientiously. Sorry. Aspiring is moving away from me. Okay.
Oh, okay. The short and skinny answer is no. Because the ability to express, like our ability to express ourselves, is dependent on our understanding of the function of language. And so let me just give a quick example of what I'm saying. So this give me an excuse to pull up my good old whiteboard, and let me see if I even have it up. Yep. Okay. So give me 1 second. I'm gonna share my screen. See, y'all done messed up. When I start sharing my whiteboard, you might as well just get your sleeping bag, your pillow. Women, you might as well put your bonnet on, get comfortable, because we're gonna be here for a while. But no, I'm not gonna take too long. Okay, so let me just find something real quick. I want to explain this. I explain it all the time, but hey, I don't mind going over this over and over and over again until people get it, until people just understand it. And give me a moment to find it. I have to look through 600 slides here. But if I, one day I'm just gonna do a show and just share notes. Like I have notes in the form of slides, and I have over 600 of these things. And this is from conversation, because I use a whiteboard, right, when I talk, explain, whatever. And so these notes are really full of examples or explanations or things that I talk and want to show or whatever. But give me a second. But y'all don't have to wait on me. If somebody has something else. And I can't believe I can't find this real quick. As much as I talk about that. All right, here we go. Okay, so you all have seen this before. So y'all see the screen? Let me lock it on for YouTube. For YouTube, let me lock it on me. Okay, so you all should see this. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
See it? Okay, so now that I could say a lot about this, but I'm gonna be as brief as I can without missing anything. So this is an example of a visual representation of language. Okay, so let me just explain. So language is made up of three things. It's like a triad. Okay, on one side, it's like a coin that has two sides plus the rim itself, or we could look at it like a triangle, like how I have it on the screen. Okay, so on one side of language is the form. Okay, so you hear linguists talk about form and function, or form and meaning. So on the form side, what that means is that it's the sounds that you actually hear or characters that you actually see if it's writing. If it's vocal, then it's the sounds. If it's in writing, it's the characters, the different forms that those take. Now, that's one side. On the other side, we have meaning, or the concept, and that's mental. Okay. Now, those two sides are therefore linked together or glued together. And so that's why you see up here the link. All three of these components make up what's called a sign. All right. Now, so what is language? Language is a set of signs. And a speech community, when you have a group of people that speak a language, what we're really saying is that this group of people share the same signs. And because they share the same signs, they're able to communicate. All right. So what is a sign again? You have form and meaning and the link between the two. So let me give a practical example. And I thought I had one very quick, so I'll just say it. Where is my set of examples? Okay, and I don't have one. All right, so let's just make up one right now. So, and I'll type it on here. So let's say we have a form. Am I spelling that right? Amy Cat?
E instead of A. Yes.
Okay, we'll keep it in lowercase. All right. So this form spelled out in this pattern. So we have L-I-E-C-H. Now, by itself, you may not have any idea what that is. It's just 5 characters in a row. Okay, we could roughly pronounce that as liech. Liech. All right. That's a form, but that's not a word yet. That's not a sign, and it's not even a word yet. Now we would define this as a word because we're looking at it, but it's not a sign. Now, on the concept side, let me put this over here. On the concept side, let's put a large animal with big ears and weighs tons. All right. We're gonna get a little more descriptive. Large gray animal. Now, roughly, so this is the concept. On the concept side of this form, so we have the form in the form of written, because I typed it on the screen, so it's in the written format, but I'm gonna pronounce it liech. So I got the sound pattern as liech and the written pattern as what you see on the screen. Now, what's linked to that, what's linked to the sound pattern is this concept: a large gray animal with big ears and weighs tons. Okay. Now, that's what that is. So these three things together, or these two things linked together, is a sign. And the only way that you will understand what I mean when I give the form, because the form is the part that we interact with. These are the form side is what we can observe directly. The meaning side is we cannot observe that. So the goal of communication, and so let me back up a bit. The goal of communication and using language as a form of communication is to transmit meaning from you or from one person to another. Now, because we can't observe meaning directly, because we're not telepathic, we have to place meaning inside of a vehicle and then send it. And that vehicle is its form. So the vehicle of this meaning is in the form of writing or in the form of sound pattern, which is spoken. So it's either visible or heard. All right. So that's why and how we communicate. But the goal of communication is really to transmit this. The sound or form pattern is a means to an end, but the goal is to transmit meaning. All right. So now, go ahead.
A whole virtual soul printer machine. We could view like the body and the system of the script as a soul printer. We are literally printing our souls into signs.
Yes. And so, and that's right, because the psyche, the meaning is exist in our psyche, okay, in our mind, which is the word psyche. And that's how they translate the word soul, psych, and everything. So we're literally placing a portion of our psyche, which is this concept, into a vehicle, which is therefore observed directly by a person who's either listening or reading. Now, so that's just the concept. So now, back to this practical example. This is the concept I want to convey to somebody. I want them. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me. Before you go, Pastor, if I can ask some question.
Yeah.
So it's which challenges I would have if I use the term impression to deal with that aspect of the function of the script of the signs.
You said an impression?
The word impression, although it has a lot of another meanings because of the a type of tradition. In our perspective, in an African perspective, Afrocentric perspective, we could use the term impression as one practical, technical concept.
We can, but see, it's how you line up the explanations, and that would be okay to do, but you have to be consistent in lining up the explanation. So I'm just going through this example, like I've literally done a full presentation on this before about the form and meaning and everything, and so there's a way to kind of keep it in alignment with the nomenclature and how this is explained. So I could switch it up, but if I use impression, then I would have to change some other things the way I'm explaining it. So I'm just gonna just finish this out and keep this simple, because this, like I said, this is a whole 2-hour. I did a whole presentation before, a 2-hour conversation and presentation about this. So I'm just trying to summarize it. So this is what a sign is. So we have a large gray animal with big ears and weighs a ton. Now that's the concept that I'm trying to convey. And so this is linked to the form liech. Now the liech and this concept linked together forms the sign. So this happens to be a set of signs that forms a language. That's what a language is. A language is a set of signs. So now we can name this language, and I'm just going to put the name of this language over here, off to the side. Oops. Let me do what I'm doing correctly here. So let me put the name of this language here. So this is Duluo. And I don't know why. So this is the language of the Luo people in Kenya. Okay, so among the Luo people who speak Duluo, Duluo is the name of a language, which is a set of signs. So Duluo represents a set of signs. We call it a language. And so among their signs, this concept is linked to this form. So when they want to talk about a large gray animal with big ears and weighs a ton, they say liech. So that's Duluo. But now, if I want to do an equivalency in another language, let's say English, let me spell that right. English, we would say the form elephant.
Okay, so the lure is DHO.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Duluo.
That's not my language.
Okay.
DHO.
So, huh?
DHO. Oh, for the U, yeah.
All right. Dua. So Doluo. And so now the equivalent of this same concept, but matching or linking to a different form, is elephant. And so now we have a new sign. So we have, because remember, a sign is the three things. So we have liech linked to this concept that forms a sign. We have the sound pattern elephant that's linked to this same concept. Now it happened to be linked to the same concept. So what we're looking at right here is the elements that make up what we call translation. Translation is the word trans, which means to move, and we're translating meaning. So translation is a semantic endeavor where we're moving meaning from one set of signs over to another set of signs. So we're linking the concept, we're matching the concept to different forms. And so liech, so now we can set up the equation. We can do this. We could do this. We could say liech equals, and forgive my autocorrect. Liech equals elephant. Now we can set up the equation. Why? Because these two forms point to or are linked to the exact same concept. That is translation par excellence. All right. That's what translation is. Setting up the equation to point to the same concept. Now, so I brought all of this up because, like I said, we can go further into this to explain more, but I think this is enough for me to make my point about the question about being able to articulate. Now, so our ability to articulate depends on the understanding of this. One, the fact that we're talking is to satisfy a goal of transmitting meaning from one mind to another. And we have to do it in such a way that we have to clothe or wrap this meaning up into a vehicle and link it into a sign of a group of people or the person you're speaking to who shares that same sign. So the only way that a person will understand this sign as a Duluo sign is if they have this sign in their head. So we have to walk around with the same set of signs in our psyche or in our mind in order to understand one another. And it's for this reason why ancient people grouped human populations based on language. Like language was a very key component to human grouping, because they knew the intimacy that's needed in order for people to speak the same language, because that means that your minds are unified. So it's only by way of the unification of the mind, by way of having the same set of signs, is that you are one. So I want y'all to marinate on that for a minute, because that's very important. And remember, I said a long while ago that in ancient times, if you didn't speak my language or I didn't speak your language, we were not of the same people. Because the same people meant that we were mentally gelled together. We shared the same signs. That was a and no pun intended, that was a sign of mental unity. And so when you have mental unity, that's when you're one, irregardless of how you look and all this other kinds of things. Okay, so I just want that to be clear. So our ability to articulate is knowing, how language function, and having a mastery of that, and we can articulate ourselves to explain ourselves better and things like that. Because you can know a language well enough to speak it and pronounce the words very, very good, but if you don't understand these concepts, you still won't be very good at articulating your thoughts and meeting your goal, which is for people to comprehend. You got to encode, and then the person who's listening or reading has to decode, and that encoding and decoding pair is what we call comprehension. Whether it's reading comprehension or listening comprehension, to comprehend something is to grasp it. If you look up the word comprehend, it means to actually grasp it, but not physically, but grasp it in your mind. And the only way you're going to grasp something in your mind is if you can match it. You have to have the sign in your head already to understand somebody else giving it to you, delivering it to you. Now, as a little bonus real quick, when you don't have the exact sign in your mind, but you're still trying to communicate, or somebody's trying to communicate to you, we have a helping tool. So right here, this is called, this is the meaning side would be semantics. So we have a tool, an aid that helps us narrow down the sign, even when we don't have an exact match or a match. And that's called context clues. Then we have pragmatics. And those are the things that help us to add on signs. And proof of that, if anybody wants a demonstration of it, I'll just give you a verbal proof, is when we have our language acquisition as babies, when we are babies and we learn our mother tongue, our mother language, we don't have these signs in our head. And so we start to accumulate these signs based on context, based on a lot of different contexts, be it verbal context, body language, all kinds of things. We start to gain these signs. Okay, we start to create an inventory of these signs, and our first language is considered our mother tongue. All right, and so when we learn a secondary language, what we're really doing is we're doing this. We're matching existing signs to new signs, but only on one side of it, the form side. So I could do the same thing for house. The English form house points to a concept of a dwelling place, usually in a rectangular shape with windows, a door, and a roof. That's what house represents conceptually. In Spanish, that same concept has a different form, casa. Casa is the equivalent of the English house. All right. And so if somebody wanted to learn, if some of a Spanish speaker wanted to learn English, that's what they're doing. They grew up knowing Spanish, but now they're learning English. What they're doing is they're just simply matching concepts to the new forms, which in turn creates new signs, a set of new signs. So anybody who's multilingual, bilingual, trilingual, or just multilingual, they understand exactly what I'm saying right now. What they have is several sets of signs in their head. And it's amazing because when people are multilingual, they're exercising more of their mental capacities and things like that, because they actually have to separate and distinguish sets of signs from each other and not jumble them up when they talk. So like, let's, or Emiket, you'd be a good example. So I know you understand, you know Danish, English, Luo, and Kiswahili. But I noticed that when you talk, you don't mix those four like within a sentence. You don't mix those languages up as you talk. That means that your mind has to keep up with each set of signs for the purpose of communicating. And that takes skill. That takes a subconscious, something is happening subconsciously where you're able to do that. And that's why they say people who are multilingual tend to be, more have the ability to reason things out and stuff like that, because it's just a natural exercise of the mind. Anyway, I don't want to keep going on and on, but I just wanted to explain that bit. Let me erase all this because I need to use this for something else. I hope y'all got that.
Two.
Yep, and you see my example I had elephants. Anyway, so boy, like I said, I'm gonna have a show where I'm just going over these notes, because sometimes I'll go back and look over these things.
Great material.
And I can literally write a book just from these 600 slides. A couple of books, actually.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on one right now, a grammar book.
I'm waiting for it.
A grammar book that I've been working on for years. I got to slap myself in the face or kick myself because I should have had this that completed.
We're waiting for.
Yeah, it's just, my latest excuse is the pandemic. 2020 definitely changed my priorities. But yeah. So I have a lot of notes and materials that I could go over. But anyway, all right, so that's enough of that. But anybody got anything else? Was it 12:20? We got 10 minutes. I'm gonna wrap it up in 10 minutes. Did I miss anything in the chat? Let's see. Oh, that was a question from Conscientious. So listen, I know I went around the world with that, but hopefully I gave you some kind of clarity on your question. Your question was us not knowing, and I'm paraphrasing, us not knowing ancient languages, does that have any effect on our ability to articulate and et cetera, et cetera? And I'm saying no. Our inability to articulate is our ignorance of how language works. Because there's no language better than the other. Because remember, a language is a tool to solve a problem. And every language that exists serves a purpose. And in its own right, it's a problem solver. And so no one language is better than the other. And that's just reality we got to face. Because I know some people try to, judge languages. And I'm like, man, you are out your mind. Is Arabic better than Kiswahili or something? I'm like, what?
Yeah, people
That's
do
the
that
case.
a lot with English. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, you're right. English is called a bastard language. People down English. Oh, it's a bastard language, man. English is a trick language. It's a language of the devil and stuff. I'm like, what? Now, what do you say about sign language then? Language has a purpose, and if it fulfills its purpose, then it's good. It's excellent.
Yeah, the only bad language will be one that is not effective in transmitting the information.
Exactly. Bingo. Say that again.
So the only bad language will be one that is not effective in transmitting information.
So based on what I showed, say it again. Uh-oh.
Oh, okay. So, based on the Holy Trinity, yeah, an effective a bad language would be one that does not, where the concept and the form does not match.
Yes, or a language that does not have the ability to transmit concept from one mind to the other.
Correct.
That's it. Any language that can't do that, it defeats the purpose. That's just that. So there you have it. Yep. So that's what language is, and our ability to explain and stuff is the understanding of that. And as a teacher, anybody who teaches already or interested in teaching, you really have to be two things in one. You have to be a teacher and an educator. You have to have the ability to point out things, which is what a teacher does. And then you have to educate, which is to draw out, from the verb educare, which means to draw out. So you have to have a element of empathy, because you have to be able to understand what a person has, where they're at, to be able to draw things out and then point things out. And that process is an educational process. That's how you educate, and you get people to learn. And then learning leads to knowing. Knowing is a state after learning, but the learning process is inputted from teaching and educating both. And so although we only use one or the other when people use a title like, okay, my teacher or I'm an educator, but really people in that profession need to wear both hats. They really need to wear both hats to be very effective. If you wear both hats,
For sure.
and I personally try to intentionally, do that in terms of that's what sabah, the word sabah is. Sabah is both in one. Although we translate it as teacher, sabait instructions, sabat pupil or student, but they're really both on both sides, because it involves discipline and disciplining the mind through force. And that's another thing we don't realize, is that if you look at the word sabah in the glyphs, it's the determinative is either a full man with a stick in his hand or just the arm with the stick in the hand, which is a classification of force. Determinative dealing with force, or energy, force. And so the learning process has an element of force in there, because the learning process, and I got 5 minutes, and what I'm about to say is going to open the whole bunch a can of worms. But the actual learning process involves something that we can describe as force, because the way the mind works, our mind is very stubborn. The will, the aspect of our mind that we call the will is free, by nature. So when we say free will, that's like a redundant, that's like saying free. But the will itself is free. And if it feels like it's coerced, it will rebel. And so the learning process can be described as being forceful because it's a coercive process. And the skill of a teacher or educator is the ability to trick the will into accepting, almost like marketing, like you trick somebody to reach in their pocket to give you money for an item. And so teaching involves a skill set where you have to have the ability to trick the will from feeling like it's being coerced, because it has to be free. It has to feel like it's not being forced, but you have to force. And so that description of force is actually the skill of programming the mind, but you can only do it at certain times. So our ability to learn is when the mind goes in through different states, and it happens really quick, and it happens frequently and all the time. Because when you're completely 100% alert, you're going to rebel. And so the learning process is when our mind shifts into a mode where the will is partially paralyzed. So as y'all are listening to me talk right now, as I'm saying what I'm saying right now, the mind goes through quick flashes of paralysis. The will, I'm saying, not the mind, but the will. And that's the only way that stuff is accepted. And we nickname it, say your mind wraps around it. This is how we're programmed. This is how we learn new things. And so that could be described as force, not a physical hitting of force, although teaching involves that in many cultures where, children get out of line. You gotta whip out that stick and that switch and stuff. So it works both ways. So I just wanted to kind of explain that. But the word sabah or sabait or seba, as people say, it all relates to that. That's how instructions are. Instructions. Just think about that. But anyway, anybody got anything else? Because I don't want to spark something that's going to take longer than the time we got left.
Well, just thank you the presentation. Just thank you it was a great show.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
I was saying thank you for the discussion. The topics was great. It was a perfect example of what it has to be done in that field. So yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, man. I appreciate anybody coming on, listening to this nerdy stuff. This is the boring stuff. This is the boring, this is the boring stuff. This is not the yelling, kicking, and screaming and noisy stuff and battling and everything like that. So I know that it can be a bit boring or whatever. But if we're gonna make any progress, we got to know how to multitask. We could walk and chew gum, so we could be entertained. We can do that, but we also have to get busy and try to slow things down to actually make movement, make progressive movement. We have to do that.
Yeah, certainly. So
now if anybody knows me, I'm like an etymologist. I like looking at the historical development of words, because in knowing the historical development of words, it gives you a lot of insight on why we use the words we use to this very day. Like I gave the example of teacher and education, and how the denotation of those words, what they meant, and how they evolve over time. That's the etymology of the words. And teaching is to point out something. Education or educate is to draw something out, right? But also, like I said a second ago, the word sabah means we translate it as teacher or to teach or a teaching as for, in terms of sabayit. But we also say instructions. And if you look into instructions, it has everything to do with stacking or building, to build something in terms of to make something stable, or, to prepare something for something else. That's what the word instruct comes from. It comes from the Latin. And I'm not sure if I pronounced this correctly, but it's struere, which means to build. And it comes from the notion of building, preparing, or equipping something. All right. And so the same word, the same root that's in the word instructions is in the same word for construction, which we clearly see as building, because a construction worker is a person who builds things. But instruction is to build within the prefix in on there. Okay, so we have construction, destruction. The word structure itself is a building. And in the Iranian Kim, it would be menu, which would be a monument or a building, a structure itself. So structure, destruction, construction, instruction, and instruct, they all come from the same root related to building. And that's what happens in the maturation process of learning. The learning process is the consistent building. And in order to build, we always build on something that's laid down before. And the way the will and mind works, that combination, you have to actually trick it. And so we go through trance. Like the learning process is really through trance. But like I said, that's going to get into a whole nother topic that we could talk about next time. Somebody bring it back up. We could talk about the brain states or mind states that we go through, flickering back and forth as we learn, which is we go in and out of trance, You ever, if and people experience this, have you ever like this happens to people. If you ever listen to somebody but you're really not listening, you could zone somebody out, and then when they ask you a question, you gotta say, "Huh? Can you repeat that?" Or whatever, like, but there's nothing, there's really no reason why you didn't hear it, but your mind didn't accept it. It didn't compute because it did not go into the state of trance to be able to be a receiver, to be able to receive that. But yeah, we could talk about this. Definitely. We could definitely talk about this. Another time.
It would be great.
But all right. Last question though in the chat. Medjay, Wajao, did you know that a squad of runaway ancient Egyptian priests from Abu Simbel went to West Africa in the 2nd century AD and started the Mali Empire? No. So maybe we can talk about that if you want to share information about that. That would be good. Because no, I didn't know that. The Malian Empire was started by a squad of runaway Egyptian priests. Yeah, you're gonna have to share that. Maybe that's the West African connection everybody's looking for. But all right, so listen, I appreciate everybody tuned in to our Divine Words Wednesdays, open discussion, BYOT, bring your own topic. I kind of brought the topic to spark it off, but we're gonna kind of do this a little more, right? Because we're trying to strum up some interest, strum up some topics that we can actually really slow down and have full shows on. So, when we have these shows, I take notes on like bullet points. So I know what topics to kind of elaborate more on and stuff, because right now, right now I'm sitting, I don't have any books in front of me or anything. And we just kind of talking in summary form, And so sometimes we may have to pick something and really go into a full discussion on, like spend a whole hour on one thing, and I don't mind doing that. That just gives us more material to talk about.
Great,
But,
great.
all right, so I appreciate everybody on the Zoom, on the panel. Everybody kind of quiet, probably fell asleep.
Thank
And,
everybody.
all right, appreciate. How you pronounce your name? Can you pronounce your name one more time?
Odara.
Oh, Odara.
Yeah, Odara.
Odara. All right.
Yes. Odara.
Odara. All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Raul.
Duarte. Is that the middle? Oh,
Yeah, Duarte. Duarte.
Duarte. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Duarte. Yeah,
Odara.
it's a Portuguese name.
Okay. All right. That's it. Anybody else? Anybody else got any closing thing before I hit the end?
Dua.
Emiket, Chris, Donnie, Mika, Zane.
Now, I just want to say thank you as a dua to everybody who brought up the good questions, because it's always good to learn. There's so many things that you can't come up with on your own, or you can't think, but it's good when people kind of bring in their perspectives and all that kind of stuff and their questions, then we get to learn. So yeah, dua.
Okay, yeah. So real quick, Medjay, yeah, I've never heard that in terms of Egyptian priests being the seed of the Malian Empire or whatever. So yeah, if you want to share that, go ahead, because that would be new to me, but it's not to say that that's wrong or whatever. So that would be new to me, news and new to me. All right, so Sean says this pseudo dismissed that claim immediately. Sean don't even want to give the brother a chance. He doesn't want to give him a chance. Yeah. See, we don't allow pseudoism to live very long. Pseudoism has a very short life. I know around me, because I don't want to censor anybody, but man, if somebody brings something up pseudo, it will be, eliminated. I got pseudo reflex. I got an itchy finger for pseudoism. But anyway, all right. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. And since nobody else has any closing words, I'm gonna say Shem Hotep and Godet Nefir, which is good night. Shem Hotep is a farewell greeting, as we say. It means to go away, satisfied or in peace. And Godet Nefir is good night. So once again, Godet Nefir and Shem Hotep.